The veil, a thin layer between our world and the unknown. Why is it so thin? Are we meant to peek through? Are they there now? Questions we will be discussing as we peek through the gray veil. My name is Chris, and I'll be your guide as we peek through the gray veil into these stories of paranormal and mystery. On this episode of The Gray Veil, rather than tell you about monsters, creatures, and killers, I want to talk about some good people. People who dedicated their lives to the paranormal and unknown. You might have guessed it, and I'm talking about Ed and Lorraine Warren. That lovely couple who tackled the unknown without any sort of fear, though after looking at some of their interviews, they were pretty scared most of the time. But that still didn't stop them from trying to help people and trying to learn more and know more what's behind the gray veil. Now let's get a move on. I'm sure they'll be waiting. Hey, Apollo. If you hear my cat, he's just excited as I am to tell you a little bit about Ed and Lorraine Warren. As you guys know, they have an extensive career, a lot of stories, a lot of cases, and they tackled quite a bit, right? And they were more than just paranormal investigators. Before that, Ed Warren, Minnie, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing that, and I hope he does not pull my feet at night tonight because I'd mispronounced that. But he was born on September 7th, 1926, and he grew up to be the all-American boy, right? He even joined the U.S. Navy. Lorraine Rita Warren, born on January 31st, 1927, became his girlfriend, right? And they dated back in the 40s, right at the top of the World War II fiasco. And they just seem to, find themselves and find themselves being attracted to each other, and for good reason. Apollo, sir, what are you doing? Do you mind? I'm trying to tell a story here, buddy. Thank you. Now, the American Paranormal Investigators and Authors Associate. Okay, right. So, I'm sorry, I'm just reading my notes. So, they were paranormal investigators, I mentioned, also authors of many books, and they were associated with prominent cases of hauntings, right? And of course, you guys know a lot of them, and I will run some of the better known, some of the most notable ones by you in just a moment. But again, I want to tell you a little bit more about Edward and Lorraine. Edward was a World War II U.S. Navy veteran and former police officer who became self-taught and self-professed demonologist, author, and lecturer. Lorraine, said to be a clairvoyant and a light trance medium who worked closely with her husband. They both founded the New England Society for Psychic Research, the oldest ghost hunting group in New England. They claim to have investigated 10,000 cases during their career, and the cases by the Warrens have been adapted as or have indirectly inspired dozens of films, television series, and documentaries, including 17 films in the Amityville horror series. Sorry, and 7 films in the Conjuring universe, which I'm sure we're all very familiar with. And here's the names, right? They're known for the following: Annabelle, the Perron family, Amityville, Enfield, Poltergeist, demons, of course, Snedeker House, Smurl family, the werewolf, and Union Cemetery. Now, Lorraine almost died. Oh, so before I get there though, I want to come back to something. So Ed always fought for something as throughout his career as a paranormal investigator out of what I researched. And he always made sure that in every single one of his lectures and his books, people were aware, right, that these things are out there in the world, right? But most importantly, he felt that it was his mission to know and for people to know that the devil existed. As a matter of fact, as I was reading, they at some point encountered the devil. Don't know if they defeated it, but it looks like they survived it. But Ed always said that the greatest achievement that the devil had over humanity was that it got the ability to make sure that people did not believe in the devil. And as a Catholic, right, and as a person of faith and spiritual and being spiritual as I am, I agree with that because the more you separate yourself from that spiritual side, whether we want to believe things or on a scientific plane, on a scientific level, what we end up doing, of course, is that we end up losing touch with that spiritual side and those spiritual weapons and sensitivity to things. We think that because people and situations occur in such a horrible or evil manner, it's because that's just how life is. But sometimes there's a little bit more than just that, and we tell ourselves those things because we try and reason out the bad things. But again, I think it's the devil beating us in that sense that it's trying to make us believe that it doesn't exist and that it's just all it could all be reasoned out, and that's how the devil wins. And I'm not trying to preach to guys and get all religious, and I think that Ed wasn't trying to be religious as well. I think he was just trying to create this sort of awareness that he is out there, right, and he exists and these other demons exist, and but people just reject it, and rejecting doesn't necessarily mean that you're safe and you don't want to get involved with these sort of things. They still exist, they're still there, and sometimes they're really close to us, but we don't know, right? And because we are in denial, sometimes we leave ourselves open to vulnerability. Now, Ed professed this till the very end, till his death on August 23rd, 2006. I also, as I was researching, I found a fun fact that apparently a grave that they have in their little museum, because they have a museum in New England, where they've held a lot of their pieces of different things that have taken from different cases they investigated. But there was a tombstone that actually has the name Warren, P. Warren, and August 23rd as the date of death, right? And that's coincidentally the day that Ed passed away. And Lorraine, in one of her interviews, actually, as they're going through the museum, makes comment on that. And I just thought that was a little bit eerie, right? Might be just a coincidence. But, leave it up to you, right? And what you want to believe. That tombstone apparently was recuperated while they were investigating a cult, a satanic cult that was stealing tombstones from children in order to have ceremonies. So apparently that was a thing. And one of the tombstones they recuperated said P. Warren, August 23rd. I don't remember the year, but it did have the same day that Edward passed away. I'm going to be posting up on social media a lot of their interviews because they're so amazing to listen to. And just to listen to Lorraine talk is like listening to your grandma talk. So she's such a lovely person, very endearing. It's very nice to hear her talk and just talk about all these experiences that they've gone through and talk about their relationship because we all look at all these cool paranormal things that we like to talk about and investigate, but nobody ever talks about the investigators, right? And they were a great couple. They supported each other. They definitely believed in each other and knew each other so well. And there's some interviews I found on YouTube that are actually pretty personal about Lorraine and Ed. One of the stories that I actually found very personal that she shared was it says here that she almost died due to a complication while she and Ed were still boyfriend and girlfriend. It was due to an appendix rupture, and apparently the poison had already gone through her system, and the doctors did not want to operate since they didn't see the point. I guess that's just kind of how it was back in the 40s. While she was under or passed out, she didn't specify. Yeah, it didn't really specify. She had an out of body experience. So while she was passed out, she actually got to see herself, looking at herself passed out. Her her family waiting for outside of her room, and her, well, I was gonna say her husband, but at the time boyfriend Ed was at her feet, just kind of kneeling down and waiting for her to wake up and try and see what was going to happen. She didn't share more as to the details of what ended up happening. She just kind of moved on to another story, but obviously, right, she is alive. She made it because she was able to tell us about this story. It was in the 40s, so she was probably in her 20s, early 20s when this happened. She also shared how she had a letter where Ed is told, Ed tells her that the U.S., the United States, had plans to drop a bomb in Japan to end the war. Right? She actually has a letter of Hiroshima, indicating, predating a little bit prior to Hiroshima and what was gonna be happening. And she then went into a story of how she actually, with Ed, got the opportunity to go and have a chance to work with some Buddhist monks regarding some exorcisms. So they also got to go out of the country and go to Japan and work with these monks and see exorcisms and the spiritual world, not just from the Westerner side, but also in Japan, which I thought was really interesting. I kind of wish that she would have given us a little more detail regarding that, but she just told us a little bit more on the emotional side, how she wanted to go to the place where she first got where Ed first got the letter, where she tells him that they were gonna have a daughter, right? And she wanted to stand in that same spot, and she just talks about all these other more emotional sides regarding them, and they were very touching. I really liked it. But again, right, the geek in me wanted to know. It's like, okay, but like, what about those monks? Like, were there any cool stories? What did you learn? What did you see in Japan? But maybe you guys can go ahead and find out more. Which brings me to the end of this episode. This episode is pretty short, and it's not because there is a lack of something to say about the Warrens. Sadly, Lorraine is no longer also with us. She did pass away on April 18th, 2019. This year, guys, she passed away. We lost Lorraine. And she was such an amazing person, and you will see it if you check out some of these interviews. She is such a sweetheart, like such a unique individual, you can tell. I mean, I would have loved to have had the opportunity to have listened to some of her maybe lectures or talks, just to be able to get the opportunity to be there that close to her. But sadly, we won't have that chance anymore. As I was saying, Ed and Lorraine have an extensive career. They have a lot of cases. You guys can research the stories, and we will be going through different stories. We will be talking about Annabelle. We will talk about Amityville. We will talk about more about the Union Cemetery, the werewolf. Some of those cases we will definitely be touching on. But today, I mainly wanted to go ahead and challenge you guys to research into Ed and Lorraine Warren, because I feel that though they are very popularized because of the movies, they still lack a little bit more of exposure. I think these people literally gave up all their career, all their young years to this type of career, right? To the paranormal world. Um, and they were always really good people, opened to help others, and in order to try and find the truth, to help those families, and to, of course, help the spirits and whatever was there, to try and help it to lay rest, you know so they were great people. And of course, I personally, I don't know if their museum is still open, but if it is, I mean, it's another wonderful reason for me to go visit New England. I love New England. I spent a very long time there. I've always had really close ties to New England. I've always been attracted there. Anything that's Maine, Boston, and in Connecticut, I always love going there to the East Coast. But I challenge you to definitely go ahead and read into their different cases and email us about it. Let me know what story you'd maybe want us to go ahead and cover or talk about. And I'll make sure that Abar and Ariel and maybe some of the other couch people can join us and talk about those topics. But email me at the Gray Veil, right? Again, that is the Gray Veil at 8bitcouch.org. And let me know what you thought about Anne Lorraine Warren, or if there's a story that you really want us to go ahead and talk about a little bit more into detail and research and let everybody know about. Or if you had any experiences, or maybe you went to some of the lectures, or you own some of the books. I actually just bought 3 books from Ed and Lorraine. And right now they're on my queue because, of course, I have 2 other books that I need to finish reading by the end of this month. But they are for my queue. I'm probably going to get them done this December. And once I'm done with them, I'm going to go ahead and put out a podcast episode about those books. But yeah, guys, get motivated, get into this. Let me know. Look us up on social media. Again, that is 8-Bit Couch all together. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. You can listen to us, of course, on Spotify. You can listen to us on Apple Podcasts and on YouTube. Make sure you hit that subscribe and follow. We'd really appreciate it. And any sort of positive feedback, or even if it's negative, you know what? I'm down. Any sort of feedback you want to go ahead and leave at Apple Podcasts, I would really appreciate it. But of course, I would appreciate those 5 stars. Please go ahead and drop by and do that for us. Again, we would really appreciate it. And as always, thank you. And did you hear that?